Hi there. Thank you for coming out on a fairly pleasant Friday afternoon. It all gets relative, doesn't it? Given the winter we've had, where if it's just not snowing and 20 below, then we feel like it's pretty darn nice out there. So anyway, I'm Laura Milner, the very proud Dean of the College of Business Administration, welcoming you to the last in this year's series of the Citizen State Bank First Friday. And it's my pleasure. What I will do, my job, is to introduce Dennis Vogel, who then introduces our speaker. But anyway, let me tell you about Dennis a little bit. He's one of our alums, and if you don't know about Citizen State Bank, it's a community bank based in La Crosse, which consistently has been recognized as one of the top 100 community banks in the country, in addition to being one of the happiest places to work in the world. Seriously, they have the data to prove it. Every Friday, the employees get a little tap to say, well, how was it this week, or what could we do better, and things. And so he can tell you more about it when we have our reception after this presentation. He has worked, prior to starting Citizen State Bank in La Crosse in 2005, he worked at another community bank where he worked himself up the corporate ladder in a very short period of time to become Vice President of Credit Administration. He began his banking career as an intern while studying at UWL, where he obtained his BS in Finance in 1997, followed by his MBA in 2002. In addition to his role at Citizen State Bank, he's very active in other for-profit business ventures in the area, in addition to many nonprofit charitable organizations, in fact, too many to list. As a result of these efforts, he consistently gives back to the community. He's received several awards over the years, and he's recognized the importance of getting involved as an undergraduate at UWL, was very active in both AMA and FMA, and he's been involved with the Silver Eagles Board of Directors. If you're not familiar with the Silver Eagles is actually the CBA branded alumni group. And he takes great pride in our university, and wherever he can, tries to hire outstanding University of Wisconsin-La Crosse graduates. And so I know he'll be pleased to talk to you about any positions and openings coming up, as well as what it's like to be in the banking career in the near future at the reception. But for right now, let's say thank you and welcome to Dennis.
Thank you, Dean. Real quick, how many seniors do we have that are graduating here in May? Quite a few. A couple of things of advice is that you think your journey is coming to an end, you're going to stop, studying and learning, but it's just beginning. So keep that in mind that you're not done. And really, think about that when you graduate. It's not just, okay, put that away. It's all about in life, learning and challenging yourself, and also in your career, but also networking is so important. And hopefully you're taking advantage of that, because the person sitting right next to you could be the person that opens the door for you. But also when you get in that first job. Also want to give you a suggestion on a book. Please write this down. It's How to Think Like the Boss and Get Ahead at Work. Everyone that starts my organization has to read that book in 90 days. It's very simple. It's actually a very old book, probably 25 years old. And the author is Barry Egan. Okay? And it is very simple. It tells you in black and white what to do and what not to do. And you think about your first job, hopefully the people that are graduating have their first job lined up, but it's all about that first impression and staying out of the drama, and how do you get ahead? And it's very simple, and that has not changed. A lot of things have changed in the world in the last 25 years, but that has not, and that's the roadmap to be successful. So please look that up if you want to be successful and get ahead, especially if you're graduating in May. It's very straightforward on that. Also, I'd be willing to bet everybody in this room, if you were to go look back at your photo albums, you'd probably find a picture that said Life Touch in the corner, right? We've all have those, and so I'm really excited to hear how Tom has worked up the corporate ladder since he's been at Life Touch and the Shutterfly and how that's all. You think about a business model that has really had to change. It's their company. You talk about the evolution of a company to business. They have done that, so I'm looking forward to that. So Tom will probably explain more about his history. I found out that he was actually at the inaugural Citizen State Bank First Friday lecture series, and it's pretty cool that he's coming back 3 years later. So let's give Tom a warm welcome.
Thank you. Well, thanks, and I very much appreciate the invitation of coming here. Yes, I was here. A friend of mine was the inaugural speaker, Harry Blount, and there was a whole bunch of us here in the audience here to sort of heckle him, but he did good, and so I hopefully can follow in his footsteps. So yeah, I've got my agenda today as we go through it is I want to talk about what I do and what I've been able at Life Touch, and we were acquired a year ago by Shutterfly, and there's probably a familiar name. And raise of hands, who in here is familiar with Shutterfly? Has heard Shutterfly, bought from? Look at this, awesome. Thank you for being a customer. How about Life Touch? Students, picture taken by Life Touch. Okay, that's pretty good. That's about what our representation is across the states. So anyways, and I think one of the things that you'll realize as we go through this is that Life Touch is a very traditional, somewhat old, stodgy business, right? Shutterfly is a little bit more of a .com, sort of newer business. Shutterfly is about 18, 19 years old. Life Touch is 82 years old, and so I'll talk a story about how those came together and why, and there's some interesting tidbits in there. And then I'm going to weave into it about myself, about what I've done within that process, and then also otherwise in my career. But I'll probably pause a couple points because I really want to get your questions versus just kind of waiting to the end. I do want to make this as interactive as possible because this is for your benefit in terms of learning and getting something out of it. So a little bit more about myself. That's my family. This is Summerfest. For those of you who might know Summerfest, I am a native of Milwaukee, actually Greenfield, Wisconsin. Any? All right, somebody cool. I went to high school. We'll see if we match this one. I went to high school at St. Thomas More High School. No match. Okay, sorry. And then obviously came here. My wife of 32 plus years, Cindy, is with me in the audience. Yes, she is also an alumni of UWL. We met at Laux Hall. So any of you who've lived in Laux, any Laux Hall? All right, few. We were also resident assistants in Laux Hall. So that was one of the things that I did, sort of early in my career, right? That was a very interesting learning experience. And so that was one of the things that I did here at UWL. So going across, my son, he's soon to be 27. He works in he's a financial analyst up in the Twin Cities. The middle one is Katie, our oldest. She is a teacher, and she is also a UWL alum from 2012. So we're really happy to be able to come back when she was here. And then my youngest daughter, to her side, is Samantha. She's 25. She works at Deloitte Consulting. She's a consultant, road warrior, does a lot of strategy and operations consulting. And then there's me with my Lakefront Brewery sweatshirt. So anyways, we, as a family, one of the things we like to do is we like to go out and we visit lots of tap rooms. And that's one of the things as a family we like to socialize and have a few beers. I think I got that breeding here at La Crosse. So let me talk about Life Touch a little bit. So for those of you who are familiar, for those of you who don't, our main business is in school photography, okay? And some of you might sit there and go, school photography, really? Is that still out there? But yeah, it really is. And actually it is thriving, and let me tell you why, okay? So schools, our business model is that we contract with a school to take pictures of the students. They need those images for lots of things in their own administrative systems, ID badges, right, for your middle schools and high schools. And so it's sort of a necessary thing for them. And families today still really value that because it's about marking time for their children. And if you looked at our business, I'll talk a little bit more about our history, but people still today very much want a special memory. Now, they're buying things a little differently these days, okay? So a little more digital, right, with the digital age than maybe paper. But it's still very much, a thriving business overall. I'll talk more about that. So as you can see in this timeline, we've been around a long time. Two guys in a truck started this thing in Southwest Minnesota. They called themselves National School Studios, and they had like 3 schools, the infamous, single house schools that they did. And the company just grew and grew and grew from there. And then back in, as it says here, in 1980, we became employee owned. And this is sort of just, it's sort of an interesting sort of business story here. It was basically a gift of the owners to the employees. And how it worked is every year the employees got a percentage of ownership based on being there, if you think about it, for free. It was basically part of your benefit package that you got. It effectively worked like a pension, and every year you accumulated more shares in the company. And then when you retired, we paid out over 3 years the retirees, and there was a lot of people who are living very nice retirements right now because the company had a nice period of growth and funded lots of, the number that we've quoted, we have funded over $1 billion, that's with a B, of retirements of people over this history. Now, what happened along the way here, probably somewhere in, I'll say, the mid-90s or so, business got a little challenging for us. Our sales were declining, costs were going up, and our profitability was challenged. We went through several, probably a 10-year run of just declining profits. Now, the way this ESOP worked, okay, was every single year we had to have a batch of people who were retiring that we had to pay out. And as we were looking out over time, basically when we got to about 2015, 2016, my boss, our CEO who took over, said we can't keep this thing going. Even if we improved, and we were on the verge of improving our business operations, we looked out and said, just because think about it, you got your baby boomers, right? More baby boomers retiring. The obligations that we had to pay out that we looked at compared to what we think, real simple, your checkbook, right? Your checking account. The ins and the outs when we looked at it over time wasn't going to add up. And we were really worried about not having enough to pay off necessarily all those retiring employees. So my boss at the time convinced the board we had to sell the business. And so it would have been about 2 years ago we started a process. We hired investment bankers, so you hear about that. So we went through that process, hired investment bankers, and we effectively shopped the business. We had 7 companies, 6 private equity firms, you hear that term a lot, money type firms, and Shutterfly that looked at buying us. And so we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary last week that Shutterfly acquired us. And so that was April 2nd of 2018. We now became part of Shutterfly. And so this was sort of a little bit of our marketing tagline that we used for a whole year that, again, given that we're in the photography business, click, got it, right? Kind of a catchy thing that we just clicked. And we use this as part of our, marketing efforts coming together. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, so LifeTouch being this very traditional business, one of the things, given our financial situation, we weren't investing in technology at the pace we should have been, okay? So one of the downfalls we had, so for instance, a lot of our orders come online. In our online ordering site, we hadn't been investing in staying current with where we should have been. And so we paid the price somewhat as it relates to it. Some of our other again, we use cameras, obviously, to take lots of pictures, and we have to keep reinvesting in our equipment. We let that get a little old. And so one of the things that came with Shutterfly was sort of this renewed opportunity for investment back into some of the technology. So this past year, we've been real busy spending money trying to get some of our technology, updated overall to, make our ordering experiences, et cetera, better for our customers. So let's talk a little bit about Shutterfly, just some numbers overall. So Shutterfly is a public company, so you can go look up SFLY is their symbol. Traded on NASDAQ, headquartered out of Redwood City, California. Around $2 billion in sales. I'll walk through how some of those sales break down as it relates to LifeTouch. 7,100 full-time people and about another 12,500 seasonal temporary. A lot of that seasonal Temporary is in my business. We hire photographers for kind of an 8 to 12 week period, very seasonal work to take our photographs. We don't have a lot of full-time employees that do that, and that's actually a real big challenge in our business as we go overall. The Life Touch headquarters is in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, which is where I'm at. And we've got 8 manufacturing locations across North America. So pretty good sized company, overall when you look at it. When you break it down a little bit, so the traditional, Shutterfly consumer business, and again, for some of you who are familiar, which there were a lot, Shutterfly is all about photo gifting products, and they've actually branched beyond that into more home decor, which doesn't necessarily need a photo. So if you looked at a lot of their product offerings, we're getting deeper into some of those categories. But then just under $1 billion there. So Life Touch, we're similar size in terms of overall. The piece of business that I run is the schools piece in the 915 million. We're about 70% of that, overall. So the schools piece is the predominant piece of Life Touch. And then they have a business service group, which does basically thinking of forms and printing for businesses like, let's say, an insurance company on insurance applications. So that's sort of a rough breakdown of their business overall. So a little bit more about the group that I'm responsible for. So Life Touch Schools. So these are actual true images of, these aren't models, these are actual true images of children that we've taken. All the images that I have on here are we get model releases because they're so darn good. We like to use them in presentations and in marketing materials overall. But the school photography business is about a $2 billion business, okay? And we've got a pretty good share of that overall. We are the only national provider of what we do. There's a lot of local, any community that we're in, any city that we're in, you're gonna have a local studio, you're gonna have some, the whatever, Bob's studio, right, in your city, wherever you live, is probably the place where families go get their photos. They're probably doing school pictures. We also have a number of regional competitors that will cover a certain geography, but there is no one anywhere on either sides of the border that does what we do. And we're also, I failed to mention this, we're both US and Canada. So we've got about a total of about 120 locations across North America overall. We serve about 58,000 schools. We photograph in our fall season around 26 million students, okay? Lots of these images that we have to take. Every year, we have about 2 million new kindergartners that we love because we have that opportunity to market to them, right? Hopefully for 13 years along their school journey. So my role at Life Touch, so my title is Executive Vice President, Chief Operating Officer. So what I have responsibility for in the school division is all our sales, all our marketing, all our field execution, so all the photography, and then certainly with that comes finance, because there's the finance part of it, and our kind of support activities. I previously, prior to the Shutterfly acquisition, had responsibility for all our manufacturing and IT activity too. But one of the changes that took place with Shutterfly is that we're starting to integrate some of those activities within the Shutterfly operation. So for instance, we had 6 manufacturing facilities across North America that would print photographs. We're now in the midst of transitioning some of that into the Shutterfly labs. Our facilities, by and large, were old 50 to 60-year-old buildings that we owned that, we were proud of, but they weren't state-of-the-art. Shutterfly has close to 300,000 square feet, state-of-the-art, pristine facilities. And so it's real easy when you looked at that says, well, wait a second, let's let's consolidate. And I'll talk more about that later as part of some of our savings. So the manufacturing activity moved from me to the Shutterfly manufacturing, and the same with the IS and the IT as we sort of consolidated. So for me, there's been somewhat of a shift in responsibilities, but I still have all the sales, marketing responsibilities, overall. A little bit more about our business. So we photograph in the fall and in the spring. So fall is like prime time for us, okay? That is as I mentioned up here, 99+% of your schools out there do fall pictures. They need those images for what it is that they're doing in their schoolhouse, and that's the image that families want to sort of mark time. If you came to my office, okay, I have on my wall my 3 kids, and I have every picture from kindergarten to graduation. It was a lot of work for me to get it because back in the day when my kids were going to school, we didn't have as much digital, so I had to go dig through all the boxes. But it's pretty neat. I'm actually very proud of those pictures. Just watch, the kids grow, and that's that marking time tradition. In the spring, which is right now, we will come back to some of the elementary schools and do more of what I'll call let a kid be a kid, a little more free-forming, and that would be that image in the upper right. We're trying something this year where we're letting the kids be a little crazy, where they can kind of like do weird things and shapes and stuff like that, and we might have got a little ahead of ourselves on that, but we come back and do that. We don't do that in all schools, but we do it in a subset of schools. And then we do grads, so high school grads, and we don't do it everywhere, but what we do is in a lot of cases schools want one photographer for the yearbook pose, and so we come in and do that, but we also try to market them to the student. We get extra poses, and we take care of our value prop there is we take care of 2 things at once. We get you in the yearbook, but then we'll also give you a little variety that you hopefully can buy to help sort of, if you will, celebrate your achievement of high school graduation. And we do that, so a lot of places you go to a studio, right, to do it, or you might do it outside. We actually set up mobile studios at schools. So whether it's the gym, auditorium, hallways, you name it, we can figure it out. We set up sort of a mobile studio, bring our photographers in. We typically spend a couple different days. A lot of it's in the summer because you got more time to do it. But we really start hard in the summer there, and then we go throughout the fall. We do yearbooks too. Historically we've been mainly in elementary school books, but we've made a big push here lately to get into high school books. I'm sure a lot of you on your yearbook, it was probably Jostens was probably the name that did you. I see your head nodding. That's not good. We're going to get that business sooner or later. That is something we're making a big push. And one of the things that Shutterfly brings to us is tremendous printing capacity, because one of the things with yearbooks is deadlines. For any of you who ever worked on a yearbook staff, it's all about the deadline. And today's world, how printing works, typically schools need to get their deadlines in like pretty soon. Like by the end of April is when you got to get it into the printer. Guess what? You miss out on prom. Typically you don't get the prom pictures in. You miss your spring sports. So what we're able to, one of the advantages that we're really excited about is the ability to extend those deadlines and to say, hey, listen, you can go all the way till like the middle of May before you submit your deadlines, because Shutterfly, with all the printing capacity they have, because again, Shutterfly's peak business is holidays, right? So beginning November 1st through Christmas, they build, as they say, we say in the business world, they build a church for Easter Sunday, right? Everyone packs in the church for, their volume is all Christmas. So guess what? At this time of year, they've got a lot of equipment that we can print lots of books on. So we're real excited about the opportunities that we're going to get to be able to give schools later deadlines overall. And then our catch-all category affinity is basically we do sports, mainly in schools, some leagues, and we also do commencement ceremony. So, walking the stage, crossing the stage, we do those photos. So this is everything that we do as part of our business. A lot of complexity here, a lot of differences in terms of what we do. I'm going to pause here to see if there's any questions on any of this before I keep going. And then I'm also going to grab a sip of water. Yes?
Does Jostens do rings, class rings and stuff, or do they?
Yeah, the question was, does Jostens do class rings? Yes, they do. So their business, in fact, we use that against them. We say, do you want to buy your book from a ring company or from a company that actually takes the photos that goes in the books? So we actually try to use that as part of our selling thing. So yeah, Jostens is into rings. They're also into gown. They do the gowns and those, the announcements, to the extent you still do them, and then books. Ironically, our headquarters and their headquarters are probably about 3 miles apart along 494 in the Twin Cities. So whenever we're in a meeting, we're always pointing down to their offices about what we're gonna do there. So yeah, we're definite competitors, overall. Anything else? Any other questions on any of the business explanation? Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about like for me and my team, like what are we focused on? Because any business has to have key goals that you go after, and I'm a big believer in things got to be on one hand. If you get beyond one hand of priorities and goals, I'm convinced you cannot. You're not going to succeed as a business. We have 4 that we're working on. I won't get too deep into details, but I just want to share it to give you a sense of sort of as it relates to my role and what I'm trying to do overall. These are it. So first off, this is a whole day study on this one. Our field organization, we run through a field organization. We have leaders in the field. As I mentioned, we have 120 offices across North America. And in that office, they sell, they take pictures, and then they have any of the other ancillary operations to support that. And any of our territory operations might range from, in terms of the number of schools they serve, it could be anywhere from maybe 150 on the low end up to probably about 1,300 is terms of the relative size of schools they support. The revenue could be anywhere, say, from $3 million of a territory up to maybe $20 million. And our business historically has been what I would say, a very indirect management model. Territory manager had all the decision making in the world, and our home office was just sort of there for support. And that worked well for about 70 years of our 82 years of existence. I talked about our struggles, and then again, I talked about our challenging financial performance. We weren't growing schools, okay? We would lose more schools than we would gain, and it was all about the fact that our leaders in the field weren't focused. And so I took over leadership of the schools group literally 2 years ago. I've just celebrated my 2-year anniversary. First thing I did taking over is, in fact, I knew we had to change that model. We needed to create a sales organization and an operational organization. And it was all about focus, because I was absolutely convinced you could not have one leader in a field trying to do sales and lead operations, because what inevitably happened, something on the operations side of the business went sideways and they weren't focused on sales. And so we've been on this big journey, and it's been a huge change in our organization. I literally met with my leadership team within the first week and said we were going to do this. They looked at me and they said, "Tom, you're crazy. We can't do this. We've been organized this way forever. This is our culture. This is our tradition." I said, "Yep," and it ain't working. And after just more time, and we tried one and we tried two, people saw the success, because our people who were true salespeople, because I'm a big believer, you're kind of wired a certain way, okay? You're kind of wired to sell somewhat, or you're kind of wired to do operations, and it's rare that you can. We have some people who can do both, and so it's been a big journey for us to get salespeople over here, ops people over here. Now they still got to work together, And so that's been one of our biggest things we've been working on for the last 2 years, and we're about halfway through this, and we've got quite a ways we have the other half of our business we have to do. Secondly, it sounds really simple. We simply had to get back to growing more schools. A lot of reasons why we weren't, and we actually have done that in the last 2 years. We went from losing lots of schools to now we're actually growing schools each and every year, which is a great thing, and I'll share more about that later on. The third item, which is really critical for us, is what we call participation. Funny little secret in our business is that not every family buys school pictures, okay? Now, it's not that everyone loves their children, right? Your parents all loved you, right? Okay. Now, we only got about half the people in our fall business that actually buy the portraits, so the other half doesn't. And we've done a lot of research to learn why, and it's 4 reasons why. Guess what the first one is? We took a crappy picture. Okay, if over time we don't have good quality photography, people aren't going to buy. Second, awareness, and that's probably our biggest one. People don't know it's picture day. Schools are changing how they're communicating, and we've had to make a lot of efforts to create more digital, whether it's email or text reminders of picture day, to sort of help create the awareness. And that's number 2. Number 3, ordering experience. If it's hard to order, if we make it hard, there's too much friction, they're not going to order. And then lastly, of course, price value. You got to make sure you're pricing it right. So we've been on a journey for about 5 years on this one. And we've actually, we've made some good progress on this one in terms of changing the trajectory, because we had many years of what I'll call a statistical ski slope, which isn't good in the business world because ski slopes go down. And this participation number was going down for us for many years. And we've actually stabilized it here in the last years and looking to grow going forward. And then lastly, just because our company, I didn't mention this at the beginning, we've made about 200 acquisitions since our inception as a company. So over 200 companies we've bought and integrated over our time, and that's a lot. And what's happened throughout that is we've added a lot of complexity in our business. All these different ways we've done things. And the last initiative that we have up here that we're probably the one that we've struggled the most on, haven't gotten as much traction, is just simplifying a lot of our business processes. So these are sort of these have been the same things. I do a lot of talking to our employee base, right? I travel a lot in the field. I give, annual, or twice a year we bring everyone together and I talk. And I always get the question like, well, what's our secret strategy, Tom? What's cooking? What's coming on? And I get back, I always go back. I said, guys, it's boring. It's like, I'm a big football fan, right? It's like, you know what? Our plays are real simple. It's not real complex. It's back to these things. And if we're not working on these things, folks, we're working on the wrong things overall. I want to give you an illustration of somewhat of why did Shutterfly buy LifeTouch? Where did that come from? Interesting combination, right? This 80-plus-year-old company and this almost 20-year-old company, .com company. So they're out in Redwood City, which is just north of the heart of Silicon Valley, right? Which is where Facebook, Google, Apple, where they're all at. So very different cultures, right? You go to our offices, they're more of your traditional office structures with offices and cubes. You go out to Shutterfly, nope. Nobody has an office. Everybody sits at a table. It's at a lot of areas, a lot more free food than we have in our offices. And we're trying to amalgamate those cultures, but it's very much a .com company. It's pretty cool. So our business, we sell to schools, right? We can't photograph any family until the school says, yep, you can do our business. And so there's a sales process. We have salespeople that go out and talk and give presentations that try to win schools. Overall, we get a school on average, there's 450 students in a school. On average, about 200 families representing those students when you look at the ratio of how many kids in a household overall. We typically when we sell a school, we don't just sell them, let's say, fall. If it's an elementary school, we'll sell fall, we'll get spring, and we'll get a yearbook. we call it bundling. We try to get everything in there. When we go to a high school, we'll try to do fall, seniors, and maybe a yearbook, or even sports. So on average, and this is more of an elementary school, we'll get about $12,000, out of a school in a given year. Now Shutterfly comes along, and the whole idea, so Shutterfly, if you look behind the purpose for Shutterfly had an extraordinary run of growth for many years. They stalled out in getting new customers for a couple years in terms of, how were they going to get new customers? With the existing base of customers that Shutterfly had, did a great job of marketing to them. Every year, right, in terms of returning customers, how much they got out of that customer was great, but they couldn't get new customers. Well, if you remember before, I talked about the fact that we photographed 26 million kids. That's like 10 million families that we're in front of. It was kind of like, hello, that's a great source of customers for us. And the crossover wasn't all that high of families who were already Shutterfly customers that were our customers. So it made a whole lot of sense for Shutterfly to acquire us to try to market to those customers. And that's what we've done, this past year. So if we by chance can get 20%, I somewhat made this up, if those are families that Shutterfly was never ever going to get, now they have a built-in audience with us, because guess what? We're in there photographing. We're in there sending emails to them. They're aware of who we are. And now we have this story about we just clicked and we're here together. And so one of the things that we've done is that for anyone who bought digital images, we would deliver those images this past season through Shutterfly. So we just said, hey, guess what? Go to Shutterfly to go claim your digital image. So now they get in the Shutterfly's website. Oh, there's my child's image. What could I do with this image? And you look at all the wonderful products that Shutterfly had. Now you potentially combine with some of your own images to potentially do maybe your own little book, or maybe put several images on a coffee mug. Just endless numbers of product ideas you can get. So when you talk about, you hear this in the business world about synergies, right? This was the key revenue synergy that we were looking to get out of this. And I think in the earnings call back in January, Chris North, our CEO, indicated, I think we generated about $10 million overall in extra revenue this past fall season that none of us would have gotten had we not been together. And so that was a key part of why, they bought us and what we're doing overall. So I mentioned synergy. So there's three key things that when we came together that we looked to do. One, we needed Shutterfly to help us with our online experience and coming up with ways of driving people online. We have about 60% of our families buy online. The other 40% still do it to how your parents might have done it, that old-fashioned flyer with an envelope with cash or a check in it. We still do that. We're probably one of the last businesses out there that takes cash, and we take a lot of it, overall, which is a whole other set of for you accounting majors that get into auditing. There's a lot of controls and stuff we need to do, around that to make sure that money doesn't disappear, because it is true cash. So anyways, we needed them to help us get us online. Clearly trying to convert LifeTouch customers to be Shutterfly customers. I talked about that. $10 million of revenues that we generated, and then lastly, which you always have in any big acquisition, are certainly cost synergies. Like, where can we save money? And so a couple clear things. I talked about manufacturing, where we had all our sort of older facilities. You've got the Shutterfly facilities, and we're on a journey of closing some of our facilities. We've already announced that we're closing 4 of our facilities and migrating that activity in the Shutterfly. So I'm very involved with that, making sure that it goes well. Because if it doesn't go well, okay, on the Shutterfly side, we might save a lot of money, but if we dissatisfy our customers, we're going to lose schools, and schools are going to say, listen, I don't want to do business with you. This all sounds great, being part of Shutterfly, but if you can't get my orders out, I don't want to do business with you. So that's one of the things that for me right now is a big part of what I'm doing, working with the Shutterfly people, making sure that all that goes smoothly. So there we can save money, but yet keep the customer satisfaction going overall. Okay, so I'll share a little bit about my career, and I'll talk about, so go back to the title of this, was sort of an odd title, right? Misfit numbers guy, and there's a little story behind it that I would tell you that. So I started, let me go back to school. So when I came to school here, I was an education major. I was going to be a teacher, okay? I wanted to be a teacher. I don't know, somewhere in my first semester, I think I honestly said to myself, you know what? Teachers don't make a whole lot of money. Okay, I mean, I think that's the honest thing I told myself, and I said I'm not going to teach. So then I was a math major. Okay, took all sorts of wonderful classes, and I think I got to after my third level of calc, I said this crap's way too theoretical. I like solving a problem and getting to the end of the book. Right, there's my answer. Right, like in accounting and. That theory stuff in math, I said, this is going to kill me. And I didn't declare my major till my junior year. Then I said, you know what, how about accounting? I was good in math, and that was the logic. Hey, I heard about this accounting thing, what the heck? So I graduated, here in accounting. I would say at the time, the business school, you should be really proud of where you go, because this school in the last 30 plus years from a business side and certainly in accounting has really built up an awesome reputation. And it started kind of back then. Our dean at the time, I think we were just accredited and sort of just started to get some momentum. And so I started my career in public accounting. That was the deal at the time. At the time there were they called them the Big Eight firms. Only, I think, 3 of the 8 actually came to La Crosse at the time to recruit. I actually went on my own trying to send some letters, to a couple to try to just get some interviews, which I was able to do. And so I think I had about 4 job offers, out of school, and I picked Arthur Andersen, and I picked Minneapolis, I honestly I had offers in Milwaukee, which is where I was from, and I just sort of said, you know what? Minneapolis sounds pretty cool. What the heck? And so I went. And so I did spend 4+ years in public accounting. I would tell you the one thing that was always interesting to me at public accounting is that the clients that I went to, I was in kind of what was sort of a emerging business group. So it was a lot of smaller businesses. And I was always intrigued that whatever they were doing, some of them were early stage companies. And I was always, when I was doing the audits, I would just sort of because anytime you do an audit, you have a chance, you're always talking to the president because you got to go through your, checklist, any lawsuits, and I would always just take some extra time, just ask questions about the business. And I was always curious about the clients that I worked on. And I just was always intrigued about the operational side of the business. And I just carried that with me. And so I left Arthur Andersen. We were talking about networking, right? And I would tell you, I'll sort of share some of this. So I had a good person I worked with at Arthur Andersen who was a manager. He left to be CFO of the next company I went to. And he and I had a really good bond and relationship. And he started calling me and say, hey, I want you to come. I want you to be my controller, working for him as the CFO. Like, nope. I want to stay here. And he kept working me. And finally, he asked me the question. So what got me to leave, he said, do you think you want to be partner? And I was like a senior at the time. I said, I don't think so. He goes, all right. Now, he was selling me, okay? So, I get it what he was doing. He goes, because he was a manager when he left. It goes, you staff, senior, manager, partner. Right now, I think they'd throw in some other levels in there, but that's what it was at the time. He goes, let me tell you what a manager does. And he explained to me what a manager did. And it's like, listen, you can do that, or you can get involved or involved in a real business operation. And so that's what kind of clinched me at the time to make that move. because I was doing fine in public accounting. It's a pyramid in public accounting. You perform or they ask you to leave. It's kind of how it works. But I was fine. But I made that move, and I don't regret it for a second, because when I got involved in the next business, I had certainly financial responsibilities, but it was an operating business. And again, I had a chance to get more engaged with the salespeople or the operations people. And that was just something for me that I just always enjoyed about what made it tick. Part of it might have to do with my dad had a small business that he ran and I helped. I don't know what it was, but that was a theme that always sort of had me beyond the numbers, if you will, getting interested in the business. So at that stop, I added responsibilities for our manufacturing operations beyond just being the CFO. So I had to run the manufacturing side. So I had to learn pretty quick, never done it, of how that worked. My next stop was a very interesting stop. T-Master was a startup company. So I sort of was, had interesting stuff that I did, and I had networking. It was through a guy I worked with at Arthur Andersen who was on the board of T-Master. They were looking for a CFO. They were looking to raise money. It was a bunch of younger guys from the University of Minnesota. It was an online reservation company. So this was back in, look at it, that's back in 1999. They had developed an online, for tea times, right? And now there's all sorts of tea sheets out there you can do it on. They were one of the first ones that did it. And so I joined them, and it was interesting. I joined them, and within being there I was there about 3 months, and one of our competitors that was out of Canada wanted to buy us. And so I basically came there and then spent the whole time working on selling the business. And then I left after that. They actually wanted me to stay around. I didn't want to, I'm like, no, I don't want to be the, fifth guy down here working for a bunch of folks out of Canada. So I left. So the next stop was Ciprico, and Ciprico was about a $40 million data storage company in the Twin Cities, public company, and I was CFO. But again, somewhat out of necessity, just because of our size, we were small, at 40 million. I took on the manufacturing, IS, and purchasing operations of the company. And again, as I said, some of that was necessity, but part of it was just my interest in kind of how those things, ticked and what made us work overall. And then, again, back to the networking side. So I had a person that I worked with at Arthur Andersen. He was a year ahead of me. We casually stayed in touch. He was at LifeTouch. He was the CFO of the schools group. He called me and said, hey, we have a position here. I want you to come. And I said, no, thanks. I'm happy. And that was 2 years that was 1 year. 2 years later, he called me again, said, hey, he filled that position, but then that person ended up moving. He goes, hey, I got this position. And I'm going to give my wife credit for this one. She said, she goes, just go meet him. Okay, just go meet him and listen to what he's got. And I did, and it was an interesting, because what I found at LifeTouch was it was an amalgamation of a bunch of little businesses. Talked about our territories. It was really fascinating to hear about how they operated. And we're, we're a $680 million business. And so I was going to make this move to be his lieutenant of director of finance. And it was a really odd career move at the time for me, because it was really kind of somewhat a lateral or even somewhat of a downward move, because I was going as CFO, now albeit of a $40 million company. Now, I didn't go there with the hopes of just being the director of finance forever. There was a potential succession plan that he would move in to be the LifeTouch CFO, and then I would move into his job, but nothing was guaranteed. So I listened, met a whole bunch of people, and said, you know what, I'm going to go do it. And I made the move. And for me, it was a risk. It was a career risk, because it kind of looked like, well, what are you doing? Why are you? But the size of the company was a big deal, right? I went from, I did more, from a $40 million business to something that was in excess of $600 million. So that was that kind of helped it. And things turned out just fine. So he did get the CFO job of LifeTouch. I moved into his role. And then, again, similar to the other play, I got very involved in our field organization at LifeTouch in terms of understanding it overall. And so I spent that time really starting to learn the business. And then I talked before about we had a lot of challenges. So all these years that I'm at LifeTouch, we're going backwards every year in sales and profits. And I would tell you, every other year, the leader of our division changed. I mean, it seemed to be always around Memorial Day that there would be this announcement and new leader of the division. Okay, who's it now, right? And there was a lot of turmoil regarding that. And then I took over. I was talking to where was the marketing professor I was talking to? There he is. So I was somewhat stagnant with finance. It's like, I was doing this, I enjoyed it, I really needed to do something else. And I really did feel at the time, I'd been there long enough, that I wanted that top chair. And I talked to, at the time, who's my boss today, and said, listen, I can do that job. And he says, and when he told me back, he goes, you know what? We need a different, you need to transition into a different role. He goes, I can't take you from the finance chair into that chair. I think you need something else to give you the right exposure to the organization, et cetera. So we created this role called Senior Vice President and General Manager. Effectively, what I led was the marketing teams. Okay? Now, I got to tell you, this was one of the more strange meetings I've ever had in my career. So here we are. We made another change in leaders. This is one of our many changes. My boss takes over as the interim leader of our division, and he's making me in charge of marketing. So we take and we were letting go the marketing leader. So I get to meet with the marketing directors, and they get to meet me as their new boss. Now, they knew me as the finance leader. Okay? I'm the guy they kind of had to get things approved through and stuff like that. And so I have this meeting, and there was 4 of them in a room, and you should have seen them. All 4 of them sitting there like this. Now, keep in mind, these are millennial people, my team, and it's like, who are you? Like, you're what? You're our boss? Like, are you kidding me? What do you know about what we do? So I would tell you that was a huge sell job I had to make, and so we worked it all out. We figured it out, because the main thing I brought to them, because we had sort of a history of just doing lots of things and not really, and not focusing enough, and just too many irons in the fire, and nothing ever worked. And that's the one thing I think I brought for them was, hey, let's get some planning and discipline around what we want to do. And they actually taught me. I would tell you that they taught me more for those 3 years than probably, I brought some things to them, but they taught me a lot, and I gave them a lot of rope in terms of what they did. But I would tell you, they were a real sort of a show-me crowd, when I came in. And then what happened there after 3 years, we had another leadership change. And at that point, it was actually the guy who was our leader then actually retired. He looked to retire early. And then having now taken on this new role, it was pretty clear then that I was going to be the one. So that's a little of the history there. All right, this is my last slide, I think. So my words of wisdom for you, and then I'll open it up for some questions. So advice and perspective. I have 3 things that I'd share with you that I felt like for me has benefited. Number 1, I mentioned it earlier. I think one of the biggest things for people to succeed is curiosity. Okay, good curiosity, right? Not 2-year-old curiosity. Why? But just good, grounded curiosity in what it is you're doing. The book Dennis referenced, that's exactly what that book's all about. What's your boss thinking? What move are they making, and what are you working on? What's the bigger scope of what you're working on? I talked about that when I was in public accounting. And I think anyone, whether you're in finance, whether you're in marketing, whether you're an engineer, I don't care what you do, You've got to be curious about what it is you're working on. Where does it fit in? If I'm a marketing person, what am I trying to do, right? Am I trying to stimulate, is this a lead generation activity to get more accounts? Am I trying to improve my conversion rate on my website? What's the goal? What thing am I working on? Where does that fit in? I speak to all our new employees. I have any round of new employees. I have an hour meeting, a little powwow with them, talk about me and what we're doing. I always mention that to them, whether they're young, old, anywhere in between. That's the one thing I talk about. And then deliberative, really, plan, full purpose. What's the plan? I always like to have a plan about what it is we're doing versus just random. Hey, let's just do this. Overall. And lastly, integrity. And you're going to hear this a lot, and it's like, yeah, this is standard. But I got to tell you, particularly in the world of finance, right, in public accounting, when I was there, your integrity is all you've got. And when you screw that up, I got to tell you, and I've worked with people where they have. I tell you what, it takes a lot to get that back. One of the things that I share with all my people. Because in my career, I've had to make a lot of tough decisions. I've had to terminate people, right? It's not a fun thing to do, right? I've had to close plants. I've had to close offices. And there's always I'm always transparent, and I always talk about why it is we have to do what we do. And so that's just another thing that I would just tell you that is really, really important for you as you pursue your careers. So with that, I will close it off and open it up for any questions. Wide open. Yes?
So for those 10 or 12 years at LifeTouch, when you guys were following profits, following revenue, was there any moment where you were thinking maybe this isn't for me, or any time you're thinking of jumping ship?
Yeah, I did. It was, so I'll repeat the question. The question was, during those sort of 10 years or so at LifeTouch where you were struggling, did you ever think about, jumping ship? Yeah, I think I did. I think I got somewhat frustrated along there. The fact that I was the finance thing was boring. I never seriously looked. I did think about it. But when the opportunity came for that general manager role, I got a little more charge in it because I saw it as I saw the path to the top job. And so I said, all right, because I figured, part of what I told myself, and I told this to everybody, I used to always complain about the leader. Like, why didn't they do this? Or why don't they do this? And I said to everyone, guess what? Now I get to go home and look in the mirror and say that to the guy in the mirror. Why don't you do this? Because now it's on me, to make it happen. So that change sort of sparked me to stay around.
Demographics in the U.S. are decreasing significantly. How do you see your growth strategy going with students in schools?
Yeah. So actually, the studies we see on school enrollment looks pretty good, actually. However, the challenge we see with the demographics is employees. Our single biggest thing that keeps me up at night is hiring. We hire 6,000 photographers, right, for a seasonal job. We pay, around minimum wage on an hourly basis. The way unemployment is going, which is negligible, that is the single biggest challenge we have in our business. And we've done some creative things, like, for instance, I'll tell you, this fall, we've hooked up with a group of RVers. These are people who have retired young, traveling the country in RVs, and they want to earn a little extra pocket money. Husband-wife combo. So we've got about 150 of those hired for this upcoming fall. But we're really worried about, that's one of the biggest worries that we have is hiring enough people, overall. Any other questions? Yes? Yeah, so the question is, what's incentive for the school? Why do they pick us? So I would tell you, we have a strong value prop that is different from and here's how it goes. We have, we offer how I like to talk about it is what's in it for the school and what's in it for their families. When you look against our competitors, one of the big things we lean into, we're all about safety and security. So data security, we've spent millions on, for instance, what they call PCI compliance, which is credit card security. A lot of our competitors don't do that. So keeping identity of student images and people's credit card information safe is a big deal for us with the schools. How we transact with the school, a lot of places will, yeah, here are your images, and they email the images. That's kind of a no-no, sending images. Think about student images going that could get intercepted. We've got a secure portal. And then what's in it for the families? We have a rewards program that no one else can offer. We have sort of the best choice of what we call backgrounds and looks. So our pitch to the school isn't what's in it for you and what's in it for the families in terms of how we differentiate against our competitors. Now with the Jostens, one thing we're talking about is I talked about earlier, hey, we can extend your deadline on your yearbook with our printing capacity, and that's got people listening overall. One thing I will tell you, in general in our business, schools do get a percentage of the proceeds of what we do. So in general, while they need those images for things, there is a financial arrangement that and it varies by market. So, and that's not just us, that's us and all our competitors that offer up. We call it's called a commission back to the school.
Or perhaps a kickback?
No, it's not a kickback.
Okay.
It's very legitimate. It's all in the contract. It's spelled out. Yeah. In the old days, trust me, there was stuff that people did that was interesting.
Well, let's give Mr. Wargolet a round of applause.
Okay. Well, thank you.
A little bit of our appreciation. Now, we're going to be able to continue the conversation at our reception, which will follow in the Hall of Nations, at which point we thank Mr. Vogel again, because the first drink, alcoholic or non, is on him. So thank you very much. And then this is our third year of doing this series. So we'd like Dennis to stand up and thank him very much for being the sponsor of this series. So here you go. All right. So we have a reception waiting for us in the Hall of Nations. We have a speaker. We have other people, employers. We have faculty. We have other guests who have joined us. So please let us go to the Hall of Nations and enjoy the rest of our Friday afternoon for a bit. Thank you so much.